You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths, and the Colts are riding as high as they can be, Chap, but everyone else in the AFC seems to be riding right along with them. So even though the Colts are 5-1 over the last 6, they are just staying at the very edge of playoff contention still as we turn into week, what will be now 16 in the NFL season, and a visit to the Falcons awaits them, and you got to keep winning because everybody else just seems to keep winning right now.
Except Jacksonville.
Which makes it even more interesting.
Which again, for so long we had talked about playoff, wild card. Now the AFC South is in play. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen an update on Trevor Lawrence, but he's in concussion protocol.
Right.
Apparently Houston will be without Stroud again.
Yeah, his concussion's just not going away.
So while so much has gone against this team this year, we'll get into the latest personnel issues, injuries and all that. Here they are. That's what's amazing, that all the stuff they've gone through with the first-year coach and went out, and there's probably a very good chance you win the division, which means a home game. Mm-hmm. So crazy how things go. But you got to finish.
Yeah, and Matt, we were talking just a second or two ago about if we said this 3 weeks ago that the division was in play, we would have been laughed out of the room here. But now there's a three-way tie for that first spot. But of course, Colts fans know with Jacksonville in there, since you lost both of them, you're essentially one game back with 3 games to go. But like Chap just said, that's certainly not an insurmountable deficit.
No, we did not think. 3 weeks ago, I did not even think that was going to be a possibility, even if Jacksonville dropped a game or two. But the problem is they've dropped a lot of games.
Right.
They dropped like 3 in a row. So that sets it up so that, and really Houston, I know they probably won't have Stroud this week, but Houston's in the same situation as the Colts. If you can win out at the end of your season and Jacksonville drops one more game, you win the division, you host a home playoff game. Yeah. And this is unfathomable to me because Jacksonville had looked so good up to a point, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of the bottom's falling out there.
And Chap, like you said, it goes to the backup quarterbacks now because with what's his face in Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, out now.
You got a concussion too? Short-term memory is one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you okay? Are you all right?
I have sticker shock right now because we have to replace a gas line in the house, and I was getting close this morning. It's to the furnace, not to the furnace, to the fireplace. So it's not even the main gas line. It's like the house is fine, just my wife can't turn on the fireplace when she wants to in the evening.
Oh, so, darn!
I know. Dadgummit, now we have to replace this gas line, but I get it. I'm not burying my wife here. I get it completely. This needs to be replaced, and I'm not going to get into all the semantics, but for all of our listeners out there, I'll just let you know you have 2 options in life. You can either be happy or you can own a home. Those are your 2 options, and there are no other options because when you own a home, you will not be happy because you're going to get bombarded with things that just happen over and over and over again.
And I've got my car was in the shop yesterday. The wife's in the shop today.
Yep.
Christmas time when you don't want to be paying X number of dollars
and here we are.
And while houses are tough to upkeep, cars are a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Because they don't nickel and dime you.
Right.
They $50 and $100 you so.
Well, the best thing, Chap, that is you still have your salary coming in, but there's a couple of members on the Colts who do not right now for the remainder of the season.
Nice transition.
That's a great segue, Dave. A+.
Tony Brown and Isaiah McKenzie suspended for 3 games, and that's the last 3 games of the regular season. The team is, of course, keeping a tight lip as to why that is the case. Shane Steichen saying, the team sets standards, and people must be held accountable. Both were healthy scratches last week for the game against Pittsburgh, so you can deduce the fact that whatever was simmering or whatever happened likely happened before that game, and just the suspension didn't come until after the game. Isaiah McKenzie, 13 games played. He had 11 catches this year, 84 yards. He was primarily the team's returner, both on kickoffs and punts this year. Tony Brown, a special teams player mainly, very impactful in that area of the game. He played in 12 games this year, saw significant snaps on defense against the Saints, was playing very much out of position as an outside corner mainly in that game. He's primarily a backup on the inside to Kenny Moore, I would say. It would be his primary, his best role on defense, but everyone saw that what was not his best role.
He was
on
out of his
defense.
depth.
He
in
was
that game.
completely. It was not a good look. So like I don't want to completely explain it away. Like you'd hope for something better that happened, but at the same time, like I said, that was not throwing him into the best position to succeed.
Remember what Gus Bradley told us? Why did you do that? Well, we just wanted to see what he could do.
And
we knew what Darrell Baker could do. That's no way to change your lineup.
And now Darrell Baker's doing decent in recent weeks, to be fair to Darrell at the same time. So, but all that to go back to the suspensions, no more Tony Brown, no more Isaiah McKenzie, Chap. So the Colts are going to have to go the rest of the regular season at least. Playoffs to be determined. Shane Steichen wouldn't say whether this suspension would last longer than that. But for the next 3 games, no more Brown, no more McKenzie.
And Tony Brown will be the bigger loss. I mean, when they left him alone as a special teams player, he's pretty good. And I thought the coverage was pretty shoddy with him inactive. So that's not a coincidence. But it's really when Shane Steichen says we have standards and you will be held accountable, that's what they're doing. And I guess from a team point of view, you'd rather make examples of people at the bottom of your roster than if this happens to somebody much higher up the food chain. But no, it's crazy. There had to be, and we knew better, but there had to be 3 or 4 follow-ups.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the same thing, internally, private.
Uh-huh.
And we went in the locker room, and those players were given their marching orders. I asked Julian Blackman, we're going to let Coach Shane take care of that. I even asked Ryan Kelly. Mm-hmm. He stood there and looked at me, and nice as can be. And
in Ryan Kelly fashion.
And I said, I can ask you 3 or 4 different ways about this. He said, yep, not going to comment on it. So that's what they want. The problem is, as we all know, is in absence of details, your mind wanders. This is such a harsh penalty that this could not have been they missed bed check. They missed a meeting or two. This had to be something, and at some point it will come out because
it does.
It always comes out. But for now, they're going to keep this in-house, and I understand that. It's just that when you tell the media that we're not going to tell you, well, then we really want to know what was going on. But for now, this is where they stand, and they're not going to breathe a word of it.
Yeah, Matt, whenever you're talking about just a team, I mean, offense and defense are the first 2 that come to mind, but special teams is an incredibly valuable piece too. It's not as dynamic as either of the other 2 typically. But we saw earlier this year, I mean, in the Titans game, how valuable quality special teams play can be.
Baltimore,
how quality special teams play can be. And we'll get into Matt Gay a little bit later in this show, too. But not having Tony Brown, I think, can be a significant loss. It comes to other people to step up, as it always does. And Josh Downs will be the one to step up for the returner role, it seems, as what we saw last week. But somebody else is going to have to fill in for Tony Brown in a coverage role and try not to get lose too many hidden yards from the special teams standpoint.
Well, and as good as special teams has been for the Colts in some of their games this year, the last couple of weeks have not been great for them. They had the special teams penalty that led to a field goal or to a touchdown for the Bengals in that debacle. And then, I mean, if you have one negative from the game that they played a very good game against the Steelers, but they were not good on special teams. Again, we had a blocked punt. We had the coverage unit break down a couple of times. And then you mentioned Matt Gay having some struggles from the kicking game. So it's still an important part, and it can win or lose you some games.
Yeah, and as Chap, as you referred to, it's not a coincidence that Tony Brown was out for this last game, and the coverage unit against Pittsburgh was not up to par from what we've seen in the past, because that, like, it's relevant, and that's, I think that's the point that I'm trying to drive home, is that, like, is it as bad as losing DeForest Buckner or Kenny Moore? No, because those guys are Pro Bowl guys on the defensive side of the ball that see 60, 70 snaps a game. But is it significant that they'll see 5 or 6 snaps a game and could result in a swing of 15 to 25 yards, depending on if the coverage is bad or really bad? Yeah, it's a significant loss. So the Colts are going to have to go forward without them, and we'll see exactly how that shapes up down the road. And when there's just little margin for error, little errors or little differences just become magnified. So this is something that could become magnified down the stretch.
And when you're facing teams like they are now that are offensively challenged, the last thing you want to do is give off a 25-yard punt return or whatever, where it is a shorter field. So those are the hidden yards. And again, this team's doing what it needs to, but you can't give a team, Atlanta, with a backup quarterback, again, short fields like the Colts did a couple of times last week with Pittsburgh. So it'll be felt. I think they're going to feel Tony Brown's loss more than McKenzie. I really do. Although now Isaiah McKenzie, he might have been needed if Michael Pittman's not going to be there, which we won't know. Although they play totally different positions at receiver. So, but I think I think Tony Brown will be missed more than Isaiah McKenzie.
But even with the loss of both of those players, the Colts did end up wrecking the Steelers 30-13. Did not look like that would be the case early on, giving up 13 straight points to open the game. But then the Colts went and scored 30 unanswered themselves to bring us to that final score. Some huge performances by the offensive line to open up holes, not for Jonathan Taylor, not for the injured Zach Moss, who we'll have to update on his status later, but for the likes of Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson delivering 170. Yeah, exactly. 170 yards on the ground, 5 yards per carry, and they were both running well. There was one point in that game where they had a 13-play drive. Every play was a run until they kicked a field goal at the end of it. It was run. Pittsburgh couldn't do anything to stop it.
Converted 2 third and shorts on the drive.
Yes, they did. The best way to stop a dynamic pass rush of T.J. Watt is to not pass the ball. And especially with how T.J. Watt came out early in that game, had a pair of sacks there. I believe they were both in the first quarter. If not, they were both early on.
I think they were
early.
Okay. They were both early. Like you're thinking, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Here we go again. With Blake Freeland over there, a rookie going up against T.J. Watt. Who could have predicted this would happen? and then they were able to kind of turn the tables by really turning the strategy, realizing what the offensive line was doing in the run game, and was able to just pound him.
That was the perfect game plan, the way this team's built.
Yep,
it was. It is. Minshew made his throws. What I wrote about after the game is remember Steichen, it's throw to score points and run to win. Yep. And the 3 touchdowns early, passing touchdowns gives them the lead. They only threw, I think Minshew threw 7 passes in the second half.
Mm-hmm. One of them was the touchdown to Mo.
Right. And that's what you want. It works. I think the offensive line took exception to, not the criticism, because the criticism was valid, but how they were playing. And certainly in Cincinnati, it wasn't a good day. And I went back and finally looked, so much goes on. The 170 was the most they've ever rushed against Pittsburgh in the history of the series. So that was very impressive. And again, and now it's do it again. Good job, do it again.
Yeah. The Colts also snapped an 8-game losing streak to Pittsburgh, and finally a quarterback not wearing number 18 for the Colts is a winner, for the Indianapolis Colts is a winner against your fine friends over there in the Steel City.
Boy, there were a lot of Steeler fans here.
There were a ton. They travel well.
Oh.
I saw a lot of towels when they would do the crowd shots.
Holy, they were quiet at the end.
Yes, they were. The
way to quiet them down is to
take that,
stuff the ball down their throat.
So the 9-minute drive probably not only killed the Steelers, but the fans as well.
Were they up 8, 9 at the time? I can't remember what it was. But that drive gave them the cushion, and it took 9 minutes off the clock.
It did. Yeah, it was a crucial drive, and they got what they needed. I think they were up 8 because 7 or 8 because it made it a 2-score game.
And there's nothing more demoralizing to a defense than they're going to run the ball. They sort of told you by the way they were doing, we're going to run the ball, and they do it. Like I said, they converted a 3rd and 2, a 3rd and 4, whatever it was.
With the guy who was on the practice squad 2 days ago.
That's what's amazing. Yeah. I think Goodson had, I think it was 11 snaps in 3 games, and Trey Sermon hadn't done much. I think he had, was it 30-some yards
something
on the season.
Something minor.
And that's what you want. I mean, we sort of roll our eyes when they say next man up. But that's what this league is. Mm-hmm. They're where they are in large part, as much as we and I've been critical, because Gardner Minshew is the next man up.
Yeah.
He's been as effective as any backup over not 1 game or 2 games, but over an extended time. And he has basically saved their season.
And he did that against the Steelers for the most part without his star receiver. Michael Pittman Jr. got knocked out of the game, remains in concussion protocol.
What a vicious hit.
It was a brutal hit. And the young man who made that hit was suspended for the NFL for the rest of the season.
And postseason.
And the postseason as well. It was, I believe, his fifth or sixth.
That was his sixth
penalty, his sixth finable unnecessary roughness penalty.
That's true. That's true.
This year. So it was the sixth fine he got from the NFL. And that is a lot, to say the least.
One thing I mentioned on social media is the league is all about, we're going to get this out of the game. Mm-hmm. Not just a hit, but he had been fined 5 times for unnecessary roughness.
Right.
At what point shouldn't, after 3, you shut him
be
down
like,
for
okay.
It took a helmet-leading play to get him suspended. Well, I would think after 4 or 5 penalties, he's not getting not penalties.
Right, he's not
finable offenses.
Penalties.
He's not getting the message.
Right. So, but now we'll see if he gets the message next year. When he returns to the field, I'm sure it'll be a short leash from the NFL. At least it should be.
There was I forget his name. There was a safety at Denver that got suspended 4 games this year.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
I
he
forgot
appealed
who the name is too.
down to 2 games.
Yeah,
they're trying to legislate this out of the game, and
and that's the thing, because it's to legislate it out of the game means it has been part of the game, and that means
Correct.
guys who have been in the game look at it and say, that wasn't a penalty when I was in it. Guys like
anybody in mind?
Colts assistant defensive backs coach Mike Mitchell, who decides it was a good idea to go out and tweet about it and say that and bemoan the fact that this was a penalty.
I don't know how to teach my guys, or whatever.
Exactly, saying I don't know what to say. I don't know how to teach them. Well, teach them the rules. I would say that. Teach them the rules. And first of all, to Mike, I respect the heck out of him, because he came here during a time when that Colts defense entirely
what a difference he made.
Needed a real leader, and he was a big contributor for young guys like Kenny Moore. Was either a rookie or a second-year guy when he was here. Played a massive role in Kenny's development and leading up that unit at the time. And has still kept giving back to the Colts as an assistant coach. And I think even before he was technically on the staff, he was still working here in some form or fashion with the defensive backs. And now he is technically an assistant defensive backs coach. But, not smart to tweet this out. And I understand the feeling to do it, like the frustration. So I understand where he's coming from. But not smart when it's your guy and it's Michael Pittman that got knocked out and has a concussion and might not be able to play next week.
And then I didn't see the time difference, but then he put out a retweet where, hey, I love Michael.
I love Pitt.
To life, which is a good terminology.
Yeah, thank you for using that one.
But yeah, that's one, the initial one. I think that's one where you write it, you look at it and think, nah, I shouldn't do that.
Yes.
I'll keep it. I'll go and hit my hand on the door to get my frustration out.
Yeah.
And Shane Steichen was asked about it Wednesday. And he sort of said, well, he said, something about tweets, and we'll keep that internally.
I got the sense that Shane wasn't too happy about
what Reggie
about
Wayne thought about it.
Yeah, I do too.
So, but yeah, it's the bottom line is when
we haven't talked to Reg yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But when it's one of your players as a team that got almost knocked out, and he wasn't knocked out, but out of the game, it's just not smart to almost take the side of
the opponent. Even if that's your opinion as a defensive backs coach.
What I thought was crazy, and there was more than just 1 or 2 people on social media sort of defending.
A lot of people were. I have a couple friends
and I'm
who are
thinking,
Steelers fans.
That's a hill you're going to die on?
Yeah,
really?
It's just not a hill that you can live on.
It wasn't a one-time thing. Again, this is number 6.
Yeah.
So find another guy to defend on that the league's making an example out of. That just made no sense to me.
No, and they're trying to say that he led with his shoulder. It's the shoulder that made contact. He completely lowered his helmet, so it was literally parallel with the ground.
He launched
right
himself
into
him
and launched
and
in.
That's what I had the issue with.
It is according to the letter of the law of the rule book. It is an illegal hit.
They can show that on their teaching film.
Very much so.
This is what we're going to nail you for.
Yeah, and so there's no room for defending it. Like, you can say that 10 years ago, this was not a penalty, and I get it. And
because
that was
it wasn't.
the case. Exactly. And it was never called, something like this. And there were big hits. But now the NFL is trying to keep players healthy. They're like, and you can certainly criticize the NFL in other ways for its treatment of players and player safety. I'm not going to deny that. But in this case, it is one that the NFL has taken a stand in. It's one area of the many areas they could improve player safety that they have drawn a line and said you cannot go past this line, and this kid for the Steelers just keeps going past the line. So,
and our friends at Indy Star, after the game, they talked to Julian Blackman about the play. He said that's a play we have to get out of the game.
Right.
So the message is is being received by most people here.
Yes.
So it's and we can. There are some hits you look at and think that's a football play, but the league has made it very clear how they're going to legislate this, and you're either on board or you suspend it, and it's going to cost him a big chunk of money.
It can be frustrating as heck if somebody sacks a quarterback and kind of sort of lands directly on him as he tries
hits
to roll
his helmet
off.
or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, or just graces his helmet with his arm as he's coming through. And you can bemoan those penalties. You can't bemoan this one. You can't do it based on what the NFL is doing right now. You can't do it. Anyway, that brings us forward. Moving on. And we will touch before we move on to this week, since we were talking plenty about what's happening in Colts life right now. One thing that happened was they went out to Riley Hospital for Children, and what's his name? Anthony Richardson. I gotta remember his name. Good old what's his name?
Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, that guy. Good old what's his name was right there. Anthony Richardson there.
Goodness, do we need to get you a tinted
You
helmet
might.
visor?
I know. Yeah, exactly. These lights in here are brighter than usual. I don't know, guys. But Anthony Richardson there spoke with us for a good 6-7 minutes just about life and recovery and all that stuff. He says he is ahead of schedule in his rehab, which is awesome. He says he is kind of pushing to throw as soon as possible. He also says they told him that the timeline for throwing would be 16 weeks post-surgery, and right now we are at 8 weeks post-surgery.
Tuesday was 8 weeks.
Exactly. It was right on 8 weeks. So 8 more weeks would take us into February. He would love to throw next month, I'm sure. And so we will, put completely to bed any notion that he can return this year, which shouldn't have even been a discussion at all, only among people who are not in the know online, to be perfectly honest.
I had a high-ranking Colts official say, if we get to the AFC Championship, maybe.
Stop.
I'm just saying that it came out of someone's mouth.
Stop. Okay. Right. That was just okay. That is a pipe dream.
I still may have the recording. I've got it transcribed.
I'm sure you do.
And I believe I used that quote in my story just because
high-ranking Colts official that has
the highest-ranking Colts official
that has pie-in-the-sky dreams and speaks of fantasies as if they can become reality.
I'm telling that highest-ranking official that you don't believe him.
I do not believe him in any aspect. But that all brings us to the fact that we heard from Anthony. He looks good. He sounds good. He's working, I think is what he said now, to try to work on strength because flexibility is okay. But he's working on strength so that when he does get back, he's able to throw. He can quote unquote rip it. But encouraging to see the young man out there and taking part. But he's still a ways away, chap, from being good to go.
Yeah, and there's no reason to push it. They're just they're totally different injuries and players. We're in New York that the Jets have opened the window, or I guess they've added Aaron Rodgers to the active roster. He didn't go play.
No.
What are you doing? And one of the things that I agree with is he's taking somebody's roster spot.
Yep.
It's going to trickle down to a practice squad player, but that's, I don't know, $20,000 or $25,000 a week. Mm-hmm. Somebody ain't getting.
It's pretty good.
Because Aaron Rodgers has to be relevant.
Right.
I don't know what the word is. But no, the thing with that, our takeaway from Anthony Richardson, and we've said this before, and I'll keep saying it, is he gave us every reason to believe he's the right guy. And the injuries are what they are. But I'm encouraged because so many teams in the league still don't know what they're doing at quarterback. Chicago, what are they going to do? I don't know. These guys know. Their biggest question at the position is, do you re-sign Gardner Minshew? Which I think you do. But it's really encouraging. He's got a great outlook, and it's good to know that he's on track. He's pushing it. They'll let him push it a little bit. He won't throw until the doctors say. I mean, really throw.
Right.
Remember we went through this with Andrew Luck when he was throwing with
What? No, I don't remember this at all.
I know tennis balls, and then we were looking. I remember I
Have you thrown the Duke?
Yeah, we were comparing college footballs and high school footballs, but
Stab me in
when
the
the
face
time I
with
know.
an ice pick. Talking about this again.
Okay, we'll get it's encouraging where he's at, and I like his outlook, and I'm looking forward to more than one play with JT and Richardson next season.
Yes, as we should. But like you say, Chap, I think the biggest decision this offseason comes to Gardner Minshew, and it probably also has something to do with whether another team, like the Falcons, perhaps would give a bigger contract to him to come in and compete for the number one job while they're trying to get someone else going.
Would you if you're another team, would you do that?
I don't know, but based on what Gardner's done here, maybe you would. And for Gardner, it comes down to whether he wants to stay with Shane Steichen, who he's just said this week it was a major reason that he came here to Indianapolis. Remains a good reason to be here. I'm sure the Colts should give him a good deal.
It won't be $3.5 million.
No, it will be more than that for sure. Like they've shown, it has been proven this year, not just here in Indianapolis but elsewhere, how valuable a backup quarterback is in the NFL. And we unfortunately got to prepare for the case that it will be important again. And we've seen here in Indianapolis, 2021, how valuable a backup quarterback can be, or when you don't have one and Carson Wentz is out on 0 ankles and Jacob Eason isn't playing because he's Jacob Eason and he is not
Shame
an
on the
NFL
Colts
quarterback.
for
Exactly.
not, at the time,
for not having
not
anybody,
having
for not
something.
having a backup plan. Like you need a backup plan. And in the AFC this year, it looks like teams with the best backup plans are going to actually make the playoffs. So
Joe Flacco.
Exactly, Joe.
Holy
What a
smokes.
late backup plan that is.
He was on his
making
couch.
that work. So for the Colts, like Richardson, future, Gardner, future, still good to see the young man out and about.
Well, we've seen so many of the top line quarterbacks go out, and aside from Flacco's doing some amazing things for Cleveland, Jake Browning, somehow the Bengals have not skipped a beat. We saw that firsthand a couple of weeks ago. But I mean, as far as the Colts are concerned, I mean, you've got to be envious of the Colts if you're some of these teams because of what, and we know Gardner's got his limitations. He's not Anthony Richardson.
Right.
We understand these things. We've said these things. But the steadying hand that he has brought to this team to get them through this stretch, a lot of these teams that have lost their quarterbacks have got to be super jealous. They would love to be in that same position, I guess.
And they've done this with the volatility at running back. You know, Taylor's not, let's not forget the starting running back in the opener was Deion Jackson.
Yep.
So they've done, and Taylor's missed, 7 games? 4, he missed 4 and then 3. So to be in this position, again, as much as we've nitpicked, whatever the word is, the phrase is with Minshew, he's gotten him here. Yes, quarterbacks get too much credit and too much blame. I understand that. But that's because the ball's in their hand every freaking play on offense. So he's got to do his job at a good level. When he does, and when they can do close to what they did last week, not 170 yards, which would be great, but do his job, throw the big third and whatever plays. I think he's done a really good job, even though I've been as critical of him as anybody has.
He's done a really nice job the last few weeks, especially limiting the turnovers.
Yes.
And that's key for this team. If they don't, they were +3 against the Steelers this week. And when the Colts can do that and they can run the ball, obviously they're going to win some games. They're
4-0 and they don't turn the ball over, which most teams would be.
Right.
But you just strive. You're going to have a couple of botch plays because, the other team, as they say, is on scholarship too. When they limit it and they're not, and we sat here last week and we said, T.J. Watt's going to get his. He got 2 sacks, but they weren't blow-up plays. So as long as you don't have those game-turning plays, you're in pretty good shape. And right now they're in pretty good shape.
They are in good shape with 3 games left to play. The next one will be in Atlanta on Christmas Eve, taking on the Falcons. A 1 p.m. kickoff if you're in central Indiana on Fox 59. Let's get into our opponent a little bit here this week. The Falcons are 6-8, third place in the NFC South, but still in playoff contention because somebody has to win the NFC South. And as of right now, it is the Buccaneers are in that position as we speak. But I believe the Saints are actually tied.
Yeah,
with
they're both 7
the Saints.
and 7.
Yeah, they're tied with them
tonight.
Yeah, tied with the Bucs at 7-7, and then the Falcons right behind them at 6-8. Fall way back to the Carolina Panthers, who are 2-12, who just beat the Falcons last week. So the Falcons are coming off a game where they literally just lost to the worst team in the NFL. And yet they are favored in this game against the Colts, a 1-point favorite. That is what we call a smelly fish in the business. That the Falcons are 1-point favorites.
Boy, but Vegas knows what they're doing.
I'm sure they do, which gives me pause about this game a little bit. But we'll break down exactly who the Falcons are. They have switched up their quarterback again too. Yeah, again. Desmond Ridder, it appears, is not the answer in Atlanta. They were hoping that a second or third round quarterback, much in the same line as a Jalen Hurts, could get them going. That is not going to be the case. The Falcons are going to have to look elsewhere for the quarterback after this year, but Taylor Heineke takes over starting duties. The former Washington football team / Commanders quarterback, taking the first snaps under center. And the last time the Colts and Falcons met was back in 2019. The Colts won by 3, 27-24, home game. Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback then. Touchdowns to Zach Pascal, T.Y. Hilton, and Marlon Mack in that one helped power the Colts to a victory over Matt Ryan.
All former Colts.
Exactly, over Matt Ryan and the Falcons. So all those Colts there.
Another former Colt.
Exactly.
And, of course, the last time that Taylor Heineke came here was the Terry McLaurin game.
It was.
They should have beat him.
They should have beat him. And they couldn't do it. Didn't do it. So, the Falcons have some decent offensive weapons that Heineke will throw to. We'll get to them in a little bit. But some big picture stuff first. Scoring-wise, Falcons are down in 26th in the NFL, 18.4 points per game. And the Colts, after a 30-point output, of course, remain in the top 10, 8th at 24.6 points per game. So the Falcons, a team that does not score too much, they're not terrible in gaining yards, but they're not good for sure. It's 23rd in passing yards per game. Only 200 passing yards per game. They're a better rushing team for sure. They average 126 yards on the ground, 4.0 yards per carry. That's top 10 in the NFL. They're 9th in the league in rushing. Colts 18th in passing yards, about 25 more yards per game than the Falcons, about 225. Colts are 13th in the NFL in rushing yards, 114.7 per game, 4.1 yards per rush. And big plays, again, pretty comparable. Falcons have 45. The Colts have 50. And that's just, like I said, the big picture look at these teams. And when it comes to big NFL stats, like passing is obviously the most important, more than rushing. So for scoring, as Shane Steichen says, throw to score, run to win, which is what we saw last week from the Colts. The Falcons have not been able to throw the ball too well, so they've not been able to score too well. Like, they can run it, but they never get into that position all the time to be ahead near the end of the game in order to win. They've played a lot of close games this year, a lot of close games. It's one-score games. I think they have, 14 games? They've played, I think, 10 one-score games of those 14, something like that.
There's a reason you don't win close games.
Exactly. There is a reason they don't win.
The Colts have had quite a few games, one-score close games themselves, and 8-6 and 6-8. That's a 4-game swing between those two teams.
Yep. You get the right playmakers to make the right plays, both on offense and defense. The Falcons have not had that same production, especially in dynamic plays. Matt, as we were talking, we'll get into that on the defensive side of the ball. We'll touch the fact that they are -6 in the NFL, 28th in the league with just 15 takeaways this year in their 14 games. They are not a dynamic defense, and 21 turnovers on offense, so that's not the best number either, to be -6. But like, they're not a dynamic defense, but they're you might even call them a stout defense a good portion of the time. They are 8th in the league in points allowed. They're not allowing 20 points per game, 19.9. That's 8th in the NFL. The Colts way down at 27th still in points allowed per game, 24.5 points per game. Total defense, the Falcons are 10th in the league. Passing defense, they're 8th in the league. Rushing defense, they're 15th in the league. So it's hard to pass against them. And they have some pretty good players in the secondary. They have a decent pass rush. Mike, like I just said, kind of the difference between them and an elite defense is just takeaways. They don't get quite as many takeaways, but still tough to move the ball against them. And they just get into these low-scoring matchups when it's punt, 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 and their offense can't really move the ball, but the defense doesn't allow too many yards. So they get into situations late in the game where they're not out of it, but at the same time, they can't make the plays at the right time to win those games. So that's kind of who the Falcons are this year. Pretty good defense, but just not an offense that gets a lot done in order to convert some of these opportunities into victories.
Yeah, our friend Brett Bensley posted, which is really kind of interesting. They've allowed 5 rushing touchdowns this year, all by quarterbacks.
Wow.
They've not given up a rushing touchdown by anybody other than a quarterback. So this could be a big Gardner Minshew day.
Yeah.
So
Get the min shimmy there in the end zone. Let's go.
I wouldn't mind seeing that 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
I mean,
seriously.
So that's again. I was talking to Rick Venturi, and he said, this team has problems, but he said the defense is pretty good. In games like this, it's where those mistakes, you can make mistakes, just don't make the strip sack mistake for the offense, and anticipate you're going to have, it's going to be one of those, as we've said, low-scoring games where in the fourth quarter, can you make that play? Can you not allow a 3rd and 7, whatever? Because they've got good skill players. And do you trust Heineke to make those plays series after series? And I guess you want to say no. But he did last year. Different team, totally different team.
Completely.
But again, this is one where if the Colts go down there and they can if Taylor can be what the other 2 guys were, Sermon and Goodson were, and the biggest, we'll get to JT in a minute, but ball security with him is going to be huge.
Massive. Absolutely.
We talked to him in the locker room today, and it's strange. He was very good. The entire time we talked, he had a T-shirt wrapped around his hand.
He just want us to see it?
Well, I thought, what, did they put a hook on his hand? I mean, what? But
Captain Hook out
it's
there.
It's just how he is. But he admitted he's going to have, we're kind of a brace or a wrap or whatever. But the Falcons are going to realize that this guy's coming off thumb surgery, and they're going to go after the ball. Right? That's what you do.
Scraping at it.
But that's what, again, you're going to make mistakes. Just don't make the colossal mistakes that could cost you a tight game.
Yeah, and the Falcons being -6 in turnovers, the Colts are +4 themselves with 24 takeaways, which is the second most in the NFL.
19 straight
games. And I think the next highest is only at 7 or 8 straight games.
I think I saw the graphic, and I'm pretty sure that was correct.
Right. I forget who it was.
I do too.
But I think the Broncos were on that graphic
that they had the number
19, more than double the consecutive game streak.
We talked to Gus Bradley on Tuesday, and I sort of said, how do you square the fact that, I don't know how I worded it, but this defense is just sort of, it's at the bottom of the league in points.
Yep.
Third down conversion is not the run defense, yet they're 3rd in the league with 46 sacks, which ties a Colts franchise, an
Indianapolis
franchise record. And the takeaways, are they 2nd or 3rd in the league in takeaways? So, but it's really kind of strange the way this defense is thriving on. Maybe that's how they certainly compensate for the run, spotty on run, and even the points, because they're making those splash plays that we talk about on offense, and they're doing it on defense.
Right, and that's like, it goes into a discussion that you can have, like, what do you want, a defense that stops you or a defense that takes the ball away? And I think we have the perfect example in this game. Like, the Falcons are a defense that stops you. The Colts are a defense that takes the ball away. And it always depends on what the offense can do with the ball, if you take it away, or if the offense can drive after being stopped. But the Colts, this Colts defense has proven to be a playmaking defense, and it has put the Colts in position to win a couple of the games. And if they have games like they did the other week against the Steelers every now and then, that they really do stop the opponent very, very well, then you have games that the defense can win. So I think it's very easy to make the case that the Colts have the defense that you would want if you were building an NFL team and you said, hey, you can have either the Falcons defense or the Colts defense, like you can make a very strong argument, I think, for that you would rather have the Colts defense than the Falcons defense because they're the defense that is more dynamic, that makes more plays.
But then they drive you crazy when they give up
You're right.
3 games with 37 points, whatever it was.
You're not wrong.
I think I saw where they've given up 30 plus 4 times. That might be the most in the league this year.
Yes.
And that's why their scoring defense is whatever it is, 27, 28, whatever. But now maybe they're getting their act together. Mm-hmm. So, and again, we talked to JT about this today, how the season's a marathon. Well, not now. Now it's a 3-game sprint.
Right.
Get your act together. They're getting their health at the right time. So this is going to be a pretty cool 3 weeks of the season.
Yep. Grab the momentum you have and ride with it, man. Push strong for these next 3 weeks because you're going to have to get in with how everyone else is playing, like I said.
And you can have a home game.
It's quite possible. That last game of the season against the Texans.
Is that a play-in game?
I would imagine it is, and I would not be surprised if it gets flexed to Sunday Night Football like it was a couple years ago against the Titans.
In
basically
18.
play-in game.
Was
yes,
it Frank's first year? I think it was.
Yes, it was.
They went to Nashville, and they got it done. I think Frank's walking on the field. How about them Colts?
Yep.
So that's what you want. It's how you get there. No one cares, and it's playing well at the right time and playing well in December. And no one, even the highest authority out there, could have anticipated being tied for the division lead and right now with a playoff spot in mid-December. They just wouldn't have.
Well, if the highest authority is thinking an AFC championship run is in the books, then
I'm
who
talking
knows?
before the season started.
Ah, yes. Let's get to the Falcons offense, some of their playmakers that they have. We know, like I said, Taylor Heineke will be under center. He started 2 other games this season. Both of them were losses. Bijan Robinson at running back, the rookie, has 176 carries for 801 yards, averaging 4.6 yards per carry, so a pretty hefty chunk there.
Good season.
And 4 touchdowns, 3 more touchdowns receiving, 41 catches for him. The Falcons are insistent on splitting reps at running back, much to the chagrin of many of their fans, as Tyler Allgeier has also had 166 carries, only 10 fewer than Robinson, and is only averaging 3.5 yards per carry. So he is far from the running back that Bijan Robinson is, but he has very close to the same number as carries. 3 touchdowns for him on the ground, 1 touchdown for Allgeier through the air as well. Cordarrelle Patterson, also the proverbial gadget guy there for the Falcons offense, 38 carries and 7 catches.
Can't believe he's still playing.
And neither can I. And he was like a year or 2 ago, he was really effective. But this year, it just hasn't had the same amount of production for sure. Drake London, their young wide receiver, 56 catches for him. Their leading receiver at 769 yards, has 2 touchdowns, has 14 catches of 20-plus yards, so he's averaging basically one of those every week. Kyle Pitts, another young pass catcher at tight end, 47 catches, 586 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. And tight end Jonnu Smith, a couple of good tight ends there, 43 catches, 521 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Jonnu. So the Colts probably going to have to keep an eye out in the middle of the field if they want to defend against both of those guys.
1,100 yards by those 2 tight ends.
Between those 2 guys. Yeah. So, yeah, a whole lot of passes because it more in the role of and this is even – both of those guys are more than the 8.6 yards per carry that Jack Doyle would give the Colts over the years. But I was going to say more also because you have a young quarterback, Desmond Ridder, for a lot of this season, who is, as we know now, not the future of the franchise. And so there's probably a good amount of checkdowns or a good amount of quick throws to try to get the ball out of his hands fast, and has not developed anything beyond that in order to go deeper to Pitts or deeper to London. It's been a lot of the short passing game through him.
It does sound like Heineke's going to be the guy for the rest of the season unless something super duper atypical happens with that. The coach basically said, we're going to stick with Taylor Heineke for the rest of the year, but you never know.
You never do in the NFL.
You never know.
On the defensive side, Falcons are their leading tacklers. Safety Jesse Bates III has 111. The Fort Wayne, Indiana native, 5 interceptions this year in his first year with the Falcons. Went over there in free agency from the Bengals the past couple years. Those 5 picks are the 3rd most in the NFL. Linebacker Caden Ellis, 100 tackles. Linebacker Nate Landman, 85 tackles. Safety Richie Grant, 82 tackles. Sacks, they have a couple guys who get in the backfield a fair amount. Arnold Ebiketie, the linebacker, has 5.5 sacks. Good old Bud Dupree, 5 sacks for him and 7 tackles for loss. Defensive tackle Calais Campbell, a longtime Colt wrecker when he played with the Jaguars, of course, has 4 sacks himself, 6 tackles for loss. And David Onyemata has 3.5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. Once again, a defense that it doesn't get after the quarterback quite as much as the Colts do, but it's still a defense that can get in the backfield, that can take you down there, and is not as dramatic or as high a playmaking ability, but still has some guys that can do damage here in the NFL. So those are the leaders on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And the kicker, of course, for the Atlanta Falcons, the famous Younghoe Ko or Ho. What's his Younghoe is how you pronounce his first name. Koo is his last name. Ko, K-O-O. So it is not spelled like that. His first name, but it is. He's actually a pretty good kicker though too. He's a strong kicker. He plays in a dome. Anyway, I just need to throw that in there. A little Younghoe Ko.
That's why it's good to just have a.
Exactly, just write it down.
Matt Gay.
It's
7 letters.
Maybe we should bring up Matt Gay right now and do a little bit of a what's it called? A rundown of the injury list. Limited practice this was in on Wednesday a walkthrough type day.
If they practiced today, this is what we estimate these guys would have done.
Michael Pittman limited on that day, trying to get back from his concussion.
Which yesterday was a good sign.
It is a very good sign that he's out there and limited. He was in the locker room. I saw him changing in the locker room, and we're not allowed to talk to him because he's in concussion protocol, but he was there. And
they had a guy with a tase gun that would have taken you down.
Yeah. I just remember the time that we talked to Ryan Kelly when he finally cleared concussion protocol that one time, and he didn't know that he had cleared concussion protocol.
Right.
So we went up to him. He's like, I don't know if I've cleared yet. But we were like, well, Shane just told us you did. And so he yelled at somebody else like, hey, this is on you. If I forget, it was some staffer. This is on you if I'm not cleared. But he did talk to us very graciously. But yeah, in this case, we know that Pitt is not cleared yet, and he won't be until at least Saturday, I'm sure. So we will not talk to him this week. We won't get that opportunity to rehash the past.
I'm not ruling out talking to him tomorrow.
What's that?
I'm not ruling out talking to him tomorrow.
If you say so. I would be surprised if he is cleared right after practice on Friday. I would think that they would schedule the meeting with the what's it called?
The independent
neurologist for after the media time.
Well, since we're talking injuries and all this, he practiced today.
Yep, he's out there practicing.
Brett and the other guys, and he's not wearing the red jersey.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Which means he has taken that step.
Good.
From talking to Joel Erickson and other guys yesterday, the fact that he was limited.
Mm-hmm.
He had to get to step 3, I think it is.
It's the third step.
And then this is step 4 today, where you're contact without a jersey. And then tomorrow, I mean, if he's a day ahead, and he's a day ahead, he had an extra day
because the game was Saturday,
right? So he could hypothetically come out of tomorrow or come out of today fine, whatever your term of fine is, but neurologically, and then check with the neurologist independent guy tomorrow.
Yeah.
It probably won't happen, but it's
not impossible.
It's incredibly encouraging that he's at this point.
Yep.
Now we had Ryan Kelly when you were talking. Was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago.
When he practiced, and then we thought he
took a step back.
Right. So you don't know. I'm telling you, of all the players on this team and all the shots that Pittman takes, he gets 12 or 13 targets a day and a game, and he gets lit up.
Quite often.
He does. And to see him go down like that with that hit and get up and walk off. Now, I was told that he had some memory loss that night, which I think is
standard operating procedure with concussions, unfortunately.
Correct. But I thought,
or not abnormal at least.
Right. But I thought him walking off is when he's on the field trying to get his senses. He's thinking, I'm not being carried off of this on a cart. I'm not, because that's how he is, and that's
running back mentality.
Oh, it's his dad's mentality.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just another reason where, yes, you're going to re-sign the guy. He's not everything you want in a one receiver. He's not to this point, and we'll talk about that in the offseason. But he's everything you want in a player. The durability, the productivity. Yes, you want more in this phase, but this is the kind of guy that you build your roster and your locker room around. So it's very encouraging. I hope he plays. He needs to get another catch dog on it because he's matched his career high with 99.
Yep.
But good to see. I hope he takes that last step because he's just such a pleasant guy to be around. He really is. So
he's pretty open with us. Like he's not. I wouldn't say he just spills all the beans, but he's very willing to share, unlike some other guys who are strong offensive players in the locker room who we spoke about earlier. Who and I'm not disparaging him as a person, like Jonathan Taylor, right here at all. Like they choose to speak to us and choose to speak publicly in different ways, and I you live with one, and I appreciate Pittman very much when I speak with him.
But as I said, today JT was very, very open, very engaging.
Yes, which is great.
Which is great, and it surprised me.
Yes.
But
it would not surprise you if Pittman was like that. That's the thing.
Right.
It's different,
remember when he after the
like
game
that.
was it Cleveland or New Orleans, where he said maybe I'm not part of this.
I think it was the Cleveland game.
I thought,
he had like 2 targets or whatever, right. and he knew that he stepped in it. His own mess.
Yes.
And I still remember we go to Minshew's locker on Wednesday, and Pitt's over there waiting.
Yep.
And
he's like, "Hey guys, come on over here."
And that's when we talked about the culture that Steichen wants to have. Accountability is like number one. It just is, and that's what Pitt was doing. He knew he said things he shouldn't have said, and he stood up for it. So. But yeah, and also I can't remember, my mind is fleeting. But JT again, today was the big day.
Right.
He needs to test that. He's been doing work behind the scenes with the trainers and all this, and you can get the good feel of the football in your hand, but not until somebody's out there. And these guys are they're not gonna take a sledgehammer to his hand, but they're gonna test that hand.
They're going to punch it.
They
always have these punching.
I don't want my first day to know if it's healthy, if it's strong enough. Sunday.
No.
Yeah, you don't want to, when you're coming around the left end.
And you say, "Oh, I guess I wasn't quite ready."
Bud Dupree pops you, and you're like, "Oh shoot, there goes the ball." No.
To get again for the sprint to the finish line, to have Pittman, to have Taylor, whether or not they get Braden Smith back, I don't know. He didn't practice. He wouldn't have practiced yesterday. I don't know that he practiced today, and that's really, really concerning. I don't know the time he's missed.
Yeah,
but I think by and large, this team's getting its health back at the right time.
Now you can follow us at Colts Blue Zone for some updates on that. Chap is at mchappell51. I'm at DaveG_sports. Matt is at Statomatty. Some other injury updates. Eric Johnson would have been limited on Wednesday with his ankle injury. Jonathan Taylor was a full participant technically in that walkthrough. There's a difference between being a full participant in a walkthrough and a full participant in a real practice, though, especially for a guy who's testing that thumb, as you were just talking about, Chap, whether it's for ball security or pass protection or whatever. Did not practice. Braden Smith with his knee, Zach Moss with his arm, Segun Olubi, a hip injury, and then Matt Gay there we'll touch on quickly before we get into our game predictions with his hip injury. The first kickoff last week against the Steelers, the kick did not look good. It was a meh thing. And then he missed the kick, pulled it to the right, nearly pulled another one to the right. The last couple weeks,
he missed 4 kicks in 2 weeks.
It has not been what we saw at the start of the season. So a little rest might be very helpful for him right now. And if he's not able to go this weekend, well, then we'll get some wild and crazy football
today.
Probably. Okay, good.
He was out there today. I don't know what their kicking
schedule
routine is,
but Matt Gay might be out there, and we'll hold your breath the first time he goes up there to kick for sure. And if I were the Colts, I wouldn't be opposed to saying, Rigo, go out and do the kickoffs, and we'll just focus on Gay doing extra points and
well, and what you have to do, if he's not 100%, which who is at this time, but your kicker, maybe you don't try a 56-yard field goal.
Yep.
I mean, maybe, but the one he missed what, 2 last week field goals? They weren't
long. They weren't 50 plus. They were either 40 plus or 30 plus.
Right, and that's a concern again because this team again, its margin of error is just thin. It just is, and the one he missed last week was at the end of the game, which is so what? Well, it's a big deal because does that carry over in how Shane Steichen calls plays or at the end of plays at mid-season or midfield or whatever?
His first miss last week was from 56.
Oh, it was?
Okay.
Yeah. The big long one?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was a long one.
Okay. I forgot
he
that.
did not.
That's my bad. I'm sorry.
It was
It was just way off.
Straight to the left.
Yeah,
just
it
like
was-
right off his foot.
It was a bad kick.
Yeah, some of the other ones
Which
that
we've
he's
not
missed-
seen from him.
Exactly. Usually it
Right.
maybe a late rotation or something
Right.
like that kind of hooks away from it. And last week's, that first one was just not even.
Thanks for correcting me. Yeah, I did not remember that.
But I
Okay.
went back and looked, and he's missed 2 in 2 games now, 2 in 2 back-to-back games. He hadn't missed 2 kicks of any kind in a game since his rookie year. So it's just that's what it's. I remember back in 19 when Vinny had such a bad thing, a bad season. Is early on you were thinking, is he okay? And they kept saying, no, he's fine. And even Vinny said, no, I'm fine. There's nothing. And then it comes out that he needed knee surgery.
Right.
I'm not saying that's what this is at all. But if a kicker has anything that's not feeling right, I think he's limited. What was it? Is it a right hip?
Hip is what they say,
That's all.
yes.
That's all about your swing motion and all
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, that's power, that's accuracy, that's everything there. And like you said, the margin for error is small, and that's because there are a lot of teams gunning for those final playoff spots. The Colts are currently 7th with 3 games remaining at Atlanta, home against Las Vegas, home against Houston. Playoff watch is on with the Bengals visiting the Steelers on Saturday. The Bills visit the Chargers also on Saturday, so a big Saturday.
one thing real quick with
Yeah, go
playoff. Trevor Lawrence is not practicing today.
Okay.
boy.
Oh,
So
boy.
I mean, and they're at Tampa.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're a Baker Mayfield fan.
Yeah. Who had 380 yards and 4 touchdowns last week. Baker.
He had a perfect rating.
Yeah, let's go.
And
Mayfield.
I remember watching the start of that game when he had a awful fumble at the 5-yard line. You're thinking, here, this is the bad Baker.
Here we go again.
No,
Nope. Wrong.
So it's really going. This is just going to be such a cool time that we're not spending half of our podcast. Well, if they lose this game, they're like number 6 in the draft poll. So
talk about
this is
that all
really
the
this
time.
is a fun time.
Jaguars Bucks, like you said. Patriots Broncos is Sunday night football for the Broncos there.
That's going to be awful.
Yeah,
Take
it's not
the
gonna be
under.
fun.
I mean, and
Yeah.
feel good about it.
And probably the biggest game to watch is Browns Texans for Colts fans out there. The Browns visit the Texans. They're in Houston, so keep your eye on C.J. Stroud. Keep your eye on what's his name? Joe Flacco, the Super Bowl MVP there, Joe Flacco. Who
will be in the Business
these
Hall of
lights,
Fame.
These lights are so bright in here today, guys. Seriously, did somebody just turn them up today? Falcons injuries: David Onyemata with an ankle. Caleb McGarry, their offensive lineman, knee injury, did not practice on Wednesday. Both have missed the last 2 games, so not trending in the right direction there. Colts Falcons 1 p.m. kickoff in Central Indiana. On Fox 59. Once again, Colts 1-point underdogs here. The over/under line's about 44, so they're anticipating a 23-22, 22-21 ball game in that range. And like I said, smelly fish with the Colts 5-1 in their last 6, the Falcons having lost their last 2. You got to think with the Falcons being favored in this game, the average bettor would look at that and say, I'm taking the Colts.
But Vegas doesn't know any more. We know more about this team than Vegas does.
So we think. Yes.
God,
But that gives me pause. That line, that is where it is. So I'm nervous about this game. I'm still picking the Colts.
there shouldn't be trap games.
No, not at this
This
point.
late in the season.
No, I'm going 20-17. I think the Colts win this game.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
I didn't know who you were going to go with.
Colts 20-17. But I do think it's going to be a 1-score game, just with the Falcons playing at home. And again, I'm not going to do a like last week. I thought the Colts could win by a couple scores, and that's what happened. Like we saw the Colts defense really
not
step
30
up.
in a row.
Not 30. No, it wasn't thinking that would be the case. But
Especially not after the first quarter.
yeah, so it was 13-0. I was like, oh boy, I was really wrong. Nope, I was right again. As per usual. But yeah, Colts 20-17 is my prediction for this weekend, and the last 2 games just become all that more important. Matt, what do you think?
I'm going to hope that the Cincinnati game was kind of the egg that they laid, and they got it out of their system. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the Colts here too. I'm going to go 21-17 with them, limiting the turnovers, making a couple plays on defense, and winning the game.
Chat.
I'll make it a clean sweep. I've got 24-16. I think the defense is getting its act together. Atlanta's strength is the run game, and I think this run defense is going to start really getting its act together. And we talked about the 46 sacks, tying an Indy record. These guys aren't harping on it too much, but they'd love to get that. And to think that this team could have more sacks in a season than Freeney and Mathis had is crazy.
Yeah.
I like the way they're playing. I think Minshew is going to do what he needs to do. I think Taylor plays and makes a difference. I think Pittman plays. you just keep it rolling.
Yep. It's Dio with 8 sacks. Quiddy has 7.5.
Samson's
has
9.5.
Yeah.
All career highs.
Yep. How about that? Buckner has 6. He's behind all these guys.
And we've talked. It's great to see Buck have your team high total, but he shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to be that complement. As great as he is, he needs to be that complimentary pass rush guy.
Right.
It's a good thing.
Yep.
That he's fourth.
Right. I agree.
You're third. Is it third?
I think
I've got him at 4th.
Yeah,
I've
he's
got
fourth.
Tom with 9.5, Odingbo with 8, Day with 7.5.
That's what you want.
Yep.
And he could come up and get you 3 anytime he wants.
Yep, exactly. So we hope it's an enjoyable weekend for all you Colts fans watching the Colts and Falcons. Once again, 1 p.m. kickoff broadcast in Central Indiana on Fox 59. Read all of Mike Chappell's work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. We will see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.